TMI everyone. Happy to continue teaching you on chapter 2, verse 67 onwards. So let us go ahead and say our thanks and our gratitude to our parampara and to Ishvara in the form of Narayana. Narayana Samarambham Vyasa Shankara Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om Parthaya Pratibodhitam Bhagavata Narayena Swayam Vyasena Gratitam Purana Muninam Madhye Mahabharatam Advaita-mrita-varshanim Bhagavatim Ashtadasha-dhyayanim Amba Tvam Anusandadhami Bhagavata Bhavatveshanim. Shri Krishnam Vande Jagadguru. We are continuing learning from Jagadguru Lord Krishna again and again, hailed by Shankaracharya as Jagadguru because he is teaching a message that is relevant for the entire universe, for all beings in every loka, because this is a perennial teaching. It is the Sanatana Dharma, the eternal teaching that does not become old or invalid with time. And it is relevant for all ages and for all people and in all conditions, for the unhappy to become happy again and for the happy to remain abidingly happy, for the material seekers to achieve their material goal of abundance and happiness, and for the spiritual seekers to achieve their goal of dharma moksha. All purusharthas, artha, kama, dharma, moksha, are achieved through the study of Bhagavad Gita. That is why she is called as the wish-fulfilling Kamadhenu. She gives us, she's like a cow whose udder does not only give us milk, but she gives us the blessings so that we can achieve both material and spiritual prosperity. Bhagavad Gita is not just for people who are seeking Jivan Mukti from this world and life, but it is also for people who are struggling in relationships, in their professions, in their life goals, and are getting confused and are often in crisis mode. I hope that the teachings that you have been receiving, especially of chapter 2, which is considered as the essence of the Gita, have been helping you in your day-to-day life. So this has been my hope. That is why I have been teaching to you, so that the quality of your life can be more harmonious. So in verse 66, Lord Krishna was very clear that those who do not have an ongoing practice of Dhamma, which is sensory regulation, and Shama, which is mental regulation, then they will not be able to retain the knowledge. And because they will not be able to retain the knowledge, even if they've had Shravanam, they will have, therefore they will not recollect the knowledge at the time, and they will not be happy. They will not experience the happiness, because happiness doesn't come from outside, it comes from inside. And the goal is to keep the mind and the senses in a more calm way, rather than getting agitated with every sensory stimuli. But if that doesn't happen, then he says, Lord Krishna says, Kutah Sukham, where will the Sukha come from? Where will the happiness come from? Because it had to be found inside us. So before, and actually the verse 67 and 68 kind of confirm this teaching itself. So there is not a new teaching, but it is just a confirmation of the fact that if we are not following, we don't have a practice of Shama and Dhamma, then we cannot really get the fruit of even Shravanam, because Mananam will have gaps, our knowledge, because we may be sitting in the classroom and suddenly our senses get attracted to looking at how the other person is perceiving the knowledge. Or we may, sneak a look at our iPhone or something, smartphone rather. Or we may start looking at the teacher or something, like our senses may go here and there. And usually in an undisciplined person, wherever the sense goes, the mind goes. So in fact, the mind should control the senses, but instead in the beginning, the mind follows the sense. So as a result, what happens is that for that temporary few minutes, 10 minutes, there is a gap in the deep listening. And, with the listening in Advaita and this kind of teaching, you have to listen very carefully. You can't actually afford to skip any piece of knowledge because it all builds on each other. When there are two scriptures very beloved to the Hindus. One is Ramayana, the story of Rama, and how his wife was kidnapped by an evil king, and then how he brought her back with the help of Hanumana, the monkey god. And the other is this Bhagavad Gita. These two are the holy texts. But with Mahabharata, even if you get up, walk around, come back, the story is well known, that you can go around. Like when I was a child, during this time in fall, in the days preceding up to Deepavali function, the Deepavali festival, 20 days prior, they would be the Shera, and we would have, the very famous, world famous, the Ram Leela, the play acting of Rama's story would go on in our town, Ayodhya. And because, Rama is from there, so people would come from all over the world. And we were children, so we would play tag and hide and seek and all of that, because it was a very interesting time, because instead of going to bed, you were all collected, the whole town was collected, and we already knew who was play acting Rama, who was play acting Sita, who was the monkey god, but they became heroes and heroines for us. And we children, some 30, 40 of us, we had our own army going, and we would be playing in the back. And then from time to time, we would come back and we would look, and we will know which scene is going on or what is happening, because you know the story. And if you know the story, then even if your senses and mind have gone away to do something else, like eat an ice cream cone, then it's fine. You can come back and catch up. But with Gita, with Upanishad, with Tattva Bodh and other such texts, you have to really listen. And over here, therefore, this knowledge is imperative, because only this Atmagnanam shall set us free from our own samsara. We had studied earlier how Ragadvesha, our unexamined attachments and aversions, when they get thwarted, then they give birth to Krodha, lot of justified frustration, and also first grief, then Krodh, first lot of self-pity and feeling like why things didn't work out for me, then anger, and then that anger stays for some time. Then it becomes moha, delusion. When there is moha, after that time, when we are in temporary state of insanity, we are feeling like the whole world is against us. We have all kinds of false beliefs that we believe in, and they are stinging us like poisonous snakes that live in our mind. Our life has become a living hell. At that time, we also have smriti nasha. We even forget what we knew, what were our value system, what had we made a sankalpa about at the beginning of the year, etc., etc. We have smriti nasha. We even forget we are mother, daughter, son, shishya. We just get very riled up. And if this forgetfulness state comes on again and again, it leads to buddhinasha, which means the faculty itself gets, corrupted. And then even if, like I think, even if Shankaracharya or Baba descended and tried to explain something to us, we will nod our head, but we won't really get it. And we will think they don't have it together. Like we'll think like this is what happens when we are in a stage of buddhinasha. We are hurting our lives. We are sabotaging our own happiness. We are destroying our own relationships. We are wasting our potential, but we are convinced that it's not us, it's them. So we're very convinced that we're doing the right thing. And even if somebody comes and tries to tell us, look, where are you heading? We say, look, please don't give me a lecture. Thanks, but no thanks. And then we go ahead and hurt ourselves. So we are already in this riled up state. So, and most of us live there. It's not so dramatic. It's just happening. Why else are we suffering so much? Because we don't remember. We don't remember past lessons. We don't remember our own resolutions. We don't remember what our teacher told us. So probably it does come down to like they say, got milk. So like got shama, got dhamma. It's a bottom line. So the next two shlokas I'm going to chant to you, but I was actually thinking that I should talk to you a little more about Dhamma and Shama and how I would go about, doing Dhamma Shama in my daily life. I thought it might be helpful for you. I should leave you with a practical, I should expand upon it a little more. And probably I already have, but I should give you some more idea. So let me chant 67 and 68. Indriyanam hi charatam yanmano nuvidhiyate tadasya harati pragyam vayurnami vambhasi vayurnami vambhasi. Then तस्माद्यस्य महाबाहो निगृहीतानि सर्वशः इन्द्रियाणीन्द्रियार्थेभ्यः तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता. So what is Lord saying in verse 67? He says he's just continuing with what he was warning in 66, that, kutam sukha, where will the happiness come from? Forget it. If you're studying spiritual wisdom to be happy from inside, to experience joy, it ain't happening. He says because the mind, in 67, he says, because the mind which follows the wandering sense organs carries away harati, carries away the wisdom of that person, just as a wind carries away the boat of the water. So here, the wind is compared to the force of the wandering, the mind, and the boat here is considered as, the jnanam, because we are supposed to sit in that boat and cross the ocean of suffering, and the ocean, of course, is the ocean of samsara. But if the mind is, violently moving around, then what it does is it takes that jnanam and takes it down some, you never know, it comes across some, what is it called? Whirlpool, and or hits the jnanam across some rock or something, and the boat capsizes. So it's really very simple, tad manaha, that mind, yad anu vidhiyate, which follows what? Charatam indriyam. This charatam means like, it's like grazing like cows. So the senses have been compared to the grazing cattle. They move from here to there to here. What are you doing? I'm grazing, right? So these, but when the mind follows these constantly grazing sense organs, they are grazing where? In the pastures of the world. Then Harati Prajnam. Prajnam here means Pragya, or Prajna means wisdom. It carries away the Jnanam. Whatever you have cultivated until now, it just carries it away. Vayu, just as the wind, right? Navam captures the boat and Ambhasi on the waters and takes it away, when the wind blows. So ideally we should be paddling, we should be paddling, or if it's a motorboat, we should be giving it direction. But if we leave it up to the wind, like a mind that's following the senses, then you might want to be wanting to going northeast or west or east, some specific direction, but the wind will take it in whichever direction it wants to. So then we say, this is not working, or I don't deserve knowledge, or I'm feeling like I've regressed. But what has really happened is that your mind, which is cahoots with the wandering senses, has taken off, and your boat of jnanam has capsized. It has not, because you had to give it, you had to make sure that your senses and mind are focused on what you wanted to focus on. So that doesn't happen. And then in this verse 68, he says, "O Arjuna, Mahabhaho" means Arjuna. Tasmat means therefore. The knowledge of that person whose sense organs are completely withdrawn from the senses, only there it becomes firm. So he says, therefore, he's again and again talking about, bringing the sense organs, because the sense organs are like the explorer bunnies. The mind, if the sense organs are relatively regulated, then the mind would have less excursions, in the world. So therefore, it is very, very important that we control this. So therefore, in 67 and 68, he is really only emphasizing what he had already begun saying. So without damaha, shamaha is not possible. So without sense control, mind control is not possible. So it is very important to pay attention. What's the point of finding a guru or a great saint or a teacher, and when our roving sense organs are going here and there, because they are going to most probably take the mind with you. Okay, so this is really important. This is what really he is saying, and like I said, he's comparing it to like those grazing cattle. And the example that Lord gives is of the wind and the boat. Okay, and wind doesn't take permission from us where to take the boat. In the same way, when the senses and mind are not under our direction, you stay here, you do this, we're not going there, we're not gonna touch the phone now for the next 3 hours, we're not going to even on webinar we can always change the screen and be watching Facebook along with our Acharya. Anything is possible, nowadays. And technology has given our senses a lot of options. So therefore, right now more than ever is the need to find our inner voice. What do I want my senses to eat? Because there is constant stimuli for us more than ever. Back in the days, even many, many years ago, when even I had started Vedika, we didn't have so much technology. So we had, even 10 years ago, it was simpler than it is now. So now more than ever, it is even more like a case of needing damaha and shamaha. So now let's look at, let's understand what does damaha mean. So, damaha, first of all, please understand, is not suppression of sense organs. Again and again, somehow there is a misunderstanding that, the Veda or the Hindu tradition is trying to suppress our sense organs. And in fact, that's one kind of teaching given by certain swamis, but actually Lord never is trying to teach suppression. Okay. No, none of the 10 sense organs, sensory or motor, have to be suppressed. That is why you will never see anywhere a prescription for celibacy in the Gita or in the Upanishads even, It's just a prescription of some teachers, but not the whole tradition as such. Because there is an understanding that suppression can be extremely dangerous. If you suppress any of the sense organs, especially the sexual impulse, Charak has even said it leads to perversions. And we all know what has happened in spiritual traditions where there is enforced suppression. Okay, we all know, so we don't need to go into it. But we all know what happens. So there is no need for suppression. Then nowadays, I notice that in the West, instead of we want to go against suppression, especially because probably one of the main religions here frowns or is suspicious of sex. So there is what is called as an overcompensation by letting it all loose, letting nothing tell us what it should be. We can sleep when we want to, we can hear music when we want to, we can eat what we want to, when we want to. So there is like I think an uncontrolled, violent, permissive, as we want expression probably is equally disturbing to the mind. And so this is the brilliance of Gita and the Eastern tradition coming out of ancient India, which prescribes neither suppression nor an unintelligent expression, because it's ultimately unintelligent. Both are unintelligent, suppression and uncontrolled expression. It suggests an intelligent expression or a intelligently regulated expression of the senses. So nowhere are we saying that, you must suppress your senses. So you should live like, a colorless, soundless, tasteless life. I think that will create abnormalities. We need the rasa of life. Just like, say there is river water or water from a waterfall. You don't want to, stop the waterfall because it will create a huge water burst. Similarly, you don't want to just let it all flow out in the time of monsoon, but you might want to build a dam or a reservoir or put some stones along the way so that the water can be directed in a safe way. So that's what really we are trying to do with the body, with the senses and the mind, the Ma and Shama. We are trying to give them a intelligent direction and an intelligent usage. That is what we are being told. And I think with that comes this very subtle giving back your power, that you, the soul, is the master. Actually, there is a shloka in the Bhagavad Gita coming up which says, higher to the senses is the lower mind, manas. Higher to the lower mind is the higher mind, buddhi. And higher to the higher mind is the soul, atman. So actually, and in the Kathopanishad, there is a whole teaching on how the horses are like in a horse carriage. The horses that are going in different directions are that they can go in any direction. These are the senses, but the reins are the mind, and then the rein controller and the horse, the carriage driver is the intellect, and the person seated in the carriage and having a royal ride, who knows where I want to go, is the soul, is you, is Atman, is the spirit divine, which is you. And do you know where you want to go? If you want to be in this Gita class, then are you in the Gita class? If you are making love, are you making love? If you are cooking food, are you cooking food? How are you using your intellect, your mind, and your senses? Are you doing what you want to do? Or are your senses doing what they want to because they're just, compulsively checking the phone, compulsively doing things, compulsively itching yourself, things like that. So That's really beautiful to remember. I feel like it's a great permission. It's a very powerful thing to remember, that you are the master and these are not your master. And once we remember that, and we keep remembering this, that, oh, I have an imperative. I have a soul imperative to let my senses and direct my mind. And who directs the mind? The higher mind, the buddhi, which listens to the soul, directs the lower mind. Mind directs the mind. That is another shloka coming up. And then this higher mind directs the lower mind directs the senses. So the whole thing becomes a beautifully orchestrated, harmonious system. You become a very harmonious, non-conflicted system. Otherwise, what happens? How do addictions develop? Because the sense organs, they rebel. And even if the mind doesn't want to eat, all that candy or whatever, it's just like the tongue, because it has, some borrowed power. The intellect borrowed from the soul, then the lower mind borrowed from the intellect, and then the senses borrowed from the mind and hijacked it. They ran away with your power, and now they've become rebel leaders, and now they want to eat what they want. The sexual sensory organs want to have sexual contact. The tongue wants to eat food. And, the ear wants to listen to one person's voice or somebody's voice or some loud music. The nose wants to snort something. So these sense organs become so bold, like thugs, taking away our power. But when you listen to the Gita, you're like, wait, this is not even real. And the moment you realize it's not real, they don't really have that power. It's like, say, you had 5 guests in your house, and gradually those guests, initially they had a lot of vinay, but afterwards they are just like not listening to you. They're like doing what they want. Then at some point you have to have a talk with them and say, look here, you can stay here provided you listen to me, because I'm the master of the house. So the moment this belief changes that, wait, I am the master, then automatically, the senses never really had the power, and that's the illusion. So Shama begins when we start remembering that, wait, I'm the master and I should exert my masterhood. So this is, really beautiful. And by the way, we all know Dhamma and Shama to an extent. I mean, when you were a kid, sometimes you would be playing in the playground, or sometimes you may be watching a snail lying down really closely. And I have memories of lying on the grass, looking at the birds going home. So there used to be so many birds in India back then, and thousands and thousands of birds would be going home in the evening. And so they'd all be flying in different directions, like the peacocks and, the crows and the doves and the pigeons. And so I would watch them, and I knew their journey. So, my mother would keep calling me, come in, food is getting ready. And I would not even, hear her, because my focus would be completely lost in the birds. Similarly, you may have some memory as a child of being completely lost, completely in a state of yoga with whatever activity you were doing, whether it was building a sandcastle, whether it was, catching a butterfly, whether it was watching a squirrel. So children can, their senses, because they're simple, children don't know that they should be doing anything else. Their mind is not so privileged to be, wondering about. So their senses, so you've had those moments of like complete focus. Of course, we can't do that. We can't, I don't want to be that kind of a mother that if my son calls me, I don't hear him. It's different when you're a child and your mother calls you and you don't hear. But I'm just reminding you, I'm not teaching you irresponsibility, but I'm reminding you that you have had moments of that level of, complete, deep engrossment in whatever you are doing. Can you show me hands if you have some memories of that as a child? Yeah. But now, how are we? We're so, we all have ADD. In fact, there was no such thing as ADD, but it's a technology related condition now. So it's become official now. It is entering the great big book that describes our growing diseases of the mind and body. But attention deficit disorder, what is it? It's really just the response of our brain, our mind, and our senses to all the stimuli. And we're all, I mean, I'm not, but a lot of us have that. And every day we feed it, and now we even have a name to justify it. So that's just how it is. So we do have that capacity to, be having Shama Dhamma. It actually is very restful for us. So one of the ways that I taught myself Dhamma was, and I still practice it, is that's why people who work closely with me will find that I am restful in spite of everything I do. That's because when I am cooking, I pay attention to cooking. I don't have my laptop next to me when I'm cooking. When I'm working, I'm working. When I am talking to a student, I'm looking in their eye and I'm focused on that. So I really try to use my senses economically, and I do that. And also I I have told them that I am the master. So say Sakshi, the other time my student had sent me home with some banana nut bread, and Sanjiji really enjoyed it, and he ate one, and then he said, oh, I want to eat the second one. And then he ate half of it, and then he said, help me, I want to eat more. And I just said, well, just talk to your tongue. Just, focus your attention on the tongue. And he laughed and he said, yeah, I can do that. And he walked away. So it's a compliment to my students' cooking, but it's also something that, he just focused on his tongue and he said, you're done. So you can actually focus on your sense organ and say, you're done. So you, the soul, through the intellect, through the mind, talks to your sense organ, gives it a direction. I don't know the sense, who's talking to who, I can't tell, but the very fact that you pay attention, there is a shift, That's one thing I have done. Also paying attention. So yeah, like I water my plants. So I don't just water them like a blur, or like a task. So every pot that I go to, I pay attention with all my sense organs to the symmetry of the leaves or the beauty of it or the flower or the bud. So at this point, I have hundreds of pots, but I have a memory of which one has a new bud, what is going through which cycle. And you would think, oh, Shunya, do you really have the time, along with writing your book and making changes at Vedika, do you really have the time to sit there and water your plants? But actually, it takes the same amount of time. I just choose to be 100% present with it. So I don't remember a single day where I have actually been on phone while watering the plants. One, because I mean, it's not that easy. It can be slippery, etc. But number two, I don't think I've had the desire to do that. So these are just simple things. So anyway, to reach me on phone is a Herculean business, if some of you who know that. And it's not because I'm a snob, but it's just because, if I'm going to talk to somebody on phone, it better be something I've planned to be on the phone for, or whatever. It's not just something that, just because the world made a small phone doesn't mean that I agreed to walk around with it, and anyway, it has harmful rays. I read an article about it. So, and, it then trains the mind to constantly run through it. I used to actually use another kind of phone, for which you had to log on to a certain program on my computer and then make phone calls from there or receive phone calls, which is even harder to do. And then recently, I don't know what happened, but that program's not working. So now I'm using the cell phone. And then sometimes it's also useful to check an email or send a response, but that's when I want to. And I'm a regular human being like you. But please understand that I don't see my soul being born just to be like constantly flipping through screens. I want to use my human avatar and human life to find my inner joy and to spread it. And I know that the quality of my senses and my mind is going to totally color or decolor my chitta, my consciousness. So I do this for me. I don't do this for anyone else. And at the same time, I don't necessarily be lackadaisical or not respond to people. But in a 24-hour day, there is time to do things and time not to do certain things. And if we can't even have these basic um, gifts that we can give to ourselves, these privileges to be like an elite on earth and not just be like everybody else, mass hypnotized, then spiritual journey is going to be um, an obstacle. Similarly, we have a television in my house. I have consistently put my foot down to having one in the house, in my bedroom, and I don't have one. And actually, nobody really, I mean, it's not like I had to fight against it. But my son once had a desire to have televisions in the bedroom because all his friends had it and they would all lie down and watch Nemo, etc. Right? Nemo, there was some fish that was lost. Yeah, and Lion King. So it was back then that he said, I'm the only kid who doesn't have a television in the house. So he felt a little, like different from all the other kids. I must have handled it because he doesn't hold a grudge against me. And he's not addicted to screens either. And I do have everything in my house, but I feel free, I feel freedom. And no compulsions at all to be in front of screens. In fact, I found that to write my current book and the kind of blogs that I'm writing now, it really requires me only to listen to my own inner voice. And the less I have other scripted entertainment or information that actually I'm not, interested in having in front of me, the better it is. So I'm just giving you an idea on how I lead my life. And I think I lead my life. I would never say that, oh, I need a house, or I can never watch TV, or I can never watch a film, or I can't handle a phone, because all this sounds very extremist. And it sounds like, we're trying to suppress something, or we have some guilt around being in the era that we are in. I want to be in the era. I very much want to use whatever gadgets are available. And I love my laptop and I love, having all the technology. And I'm very much, Aparna says that I'm like a very modern, guru, and I understand things, and I like that. I mean, but at the same time, I'm not. My senses are very precious, and but I do try to wake up and see the rising sun. I do try to, with the neck that I have, I have a certain seat where I can sit back and watch a full moon. I do try to. I have two redwoods. No, two not redwoods. Forgetting the name of the tree. But I have two large trees in my front yard, and then my neighbors have huge trees, oak trees in the back. And there is a certain position in my family room where if I lay back I can watch all these trees and the life around them. So in a day, every second day or so, I would spend 10 minutes just looking at the trees. Now that's, so these things all contain me. I don't have to go to a big forest retreat to do that. I can look at my neighbor's tree. I feel it's mine and I know it's life. So you can use your senses to get sattvic food in, and you can prevent tamasic. So the moment something on the television that my partner or my son may be watching, that is, I don't need to watch it, it's tamasic, I just get up and go away. Like I might be even like cooking something in the kitchen. If you've been to my house, if you're in the kitchen, you can see something that's happening on the screen. And so it's not my choice, but in case it's happening, and actually my partner also doesn't cook and watch TV or eat and watch TV. We don't live like that. But sometimes we have guests, sometimes we have my son, sometimes we have his friends over. So sometimes we have a more loud house than we would like. But even then, I'll just get up and go. I just go. Because I mentioned to you last time that even 10-15 minutes of that I feel is like trash. And would you take the trash that you were about to throw and put it in your fresh laundry? Then why would you put it in through your eyes? Why would you put it in through your ears? Similarly, what podcasts I'm listening to, whose voice am I listening to? I'm particular. I can't say no to everything, but I like to take care of things. So sense organs, you want more sattvic impulses, natural things, watching a lamp, watching a candle, sometimes incense, so I have incense burning a lot in my house. I have one lamp full-time burning and two more that I light in the morning and in the evening. We spend a lot of time lighting lamps, replacing wicks, replacing flowers in our rooms, in our various rooms. But these are the things I spend time in, because then I curate an environment that is, sattvic food for my senses. Even at our school Vedika, we have been people of limited resources, but we have always tried to have a beautiful, nurturing, uplifting environment. That has always been important to us. And rajasic impulses, too stimulating, too loud, and I think too many watching the screen, changing the screen, all these things will lead to what is known as the stimulated sense organs. So you're watching too much TV, watching too much film. I would be concerned. Being in satsang, puja, devotional rituals, listening to satsang, listening to jnanam, these are all sattvic things to do. But again, just because you have technology, so you listen to my satsang from 9 in the morning to 9 in the night, I think that is ati yoga, too much use of the senses. So you don't want ati yoga, excessive use of senses. You don't want hina yoga, don't use the senses at all. You don't want mithya yoga, wrong use of the senses. So you want to curate your sensory experience. The other thing that I wanted to talk to you about was, mind control, thought control. So I have written this for my book. So I wanted to read a section to you because I think that will be easiest and fastest. So this is on how you can control your thoughts. Okay. So thoughts are arriving in the mind, likes and dislikes, right? So it says, in Veda, there is an understanding of our inborn personality called Swabhava. It is also known as Prakriti. It is because of this inborn nature that varies from person to person. We all have different likes and dislikes, or even attachments and likes and dislikes. Okay, some of us like sports, others enjoy playing musical instruments or singing, and still others like to quietly read books. Our nature becomes quite set early childhood onwards. We may also have inborn dislike for certain foods and types of activities. From this, we can conclude that due to an inherent inborn variation found in nature, we are all bundles of likes and dislikes to an extent, and we really don't have any control beyond a point. Thoughts pertaining to likes and dislikes will arise naturally or surface in the mind on their own. But what we can control is allowing them to convert into raga, dvesha, or attractions and aversions that carry the power of compulsions. You don't necessarily have to act upon your likes and dislikes. You can do this by understanding that though you have little or no control on the first thought or likes and dislikes arising in your mind automatically, or even the second one, but you may use your willpower to determine the following: whether the third or more thoughts on a certain topic should be allowed to continue or not. Should you nourish or indulge the thought? Should you support the thought? Or should you intelligently divert your attention from that type of thought to another type of thought that challenges the previous thought or replaces it with another idea? This is called activating the faculty or practice of discernment between thoughts, called viveka in Sanskrit. Viveka includes understanding that while the initial thought is not under your control, since it is dependent upon your swabhava or inborn propensity, also known as prakriti, or maybe exposure due to sense organs that you couldn't control, causing life experiences of a sensory nature. But the perpetuation of those thoughts or not is in your hand, and you have the free will to decide whether a particular thought should be encouraged to grow into a full-fledged belief system or conviction, or should it be nipped in the bud. That is right. The external world and its objects enter your mind via the senses and produce thoughts of anger or jealousy or attachment or love or compassion, or in summary, generate a particular type of positive or negative thought. But whether you should encourage that thought or not is entirely up to you. It is in your hand. You have free will as a soul. You must use your intellect, urges the Veda. If you don't want your joy to be capsized in the deluge of negative or false thoughts, begin to audit them. But most of us don't realize that we have free will to edit and audit our thoughts. We don't realize that the thoughts which are nourished by allowing them to grow and gain strength and space in your mind colonize your samsara and become stronger and stronger until they crystallize into words or begin influencing your language. For example, if you mentally go on berating someone in your thoughts as a loser, one day inadvertently you may call that person a loser when you didn't want to. The word loser that emerges from your mouth is not a random word. It is riding the force of thousands of such thoughts, loser, 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 that you call this person in the privacy of your minds. Our speech is a gross manifestation of a thought buildup. If you find that you are mad and screaming and shouting at someone, it is not a random act. It is most probably a buildup of angry thoughts preceding that expression via words by minutes, by hours, days, or even years. Therefore, by controlling the perpetuation of thoughts and directing them using free will, you can also take control of your speech. It will become quite intentional and deliberate as a result, and you will never be caught off guard having an oops or embarrassed moment. There is a third advantage to activating the practice of viveka. So first you manage thoughts, thoughts control words, and now the third advantage. Thoughts become words, and our words become later condensed into deeds or actions, and therefore the action is the grossest product of the subtlest thought. But by using free will, we not only direct and control our thoughts and speech, but also our actions. The type of actions we take defines our character in society, and this ultimately determines our destiny. Through thought control, you can become writers of your life script, builders of your own destiny. This is why I often remind my students, like I'm doing now, that each thought that you allow to dwell in your mind has consequences, and thought by thought, you create your own destiny. The Veda says, watch your thoughts for they become words, watch your words for they become actions, watch your actions for they become habits, watch your habits for they become character, watch your character for it becomes your destiny. In conclusion, it is true that free will cannot control the first thought that pops up in your mind on its own, but do not fret. You can control every other thought thereafter. In fact, don't be ashamed or distressed or guilty if the first thought that rises is scary, dirty, or degenerate. Let the thought arise. Feel guilty only if you allow that thought to continue without your permission and not otherwise. Use your discernment or viveka shakti from your intellect to judge your own thoughts and ask the question, is this thought worthy of my attention, nourishment, and support? Is it taking me closer to my soul's reality? Or is it taking me further away? So, for example, if a type of thought that is, a thought can be, I don't need to seek approval except from my own conscience. You can continue to dwell on this thought. But now if you get another thought like, oh, I wish my mom-in-law would notice and compliment my neat and clean kitchen, then you should nip it and tell yourself, what is this? This thought is taking away my power. It is giving it to my mom-in-law. So you have to counteract it. So just like the first ripple in a river is very feeble, but if that ripple of water is fanned by gusty wind, right, it has the power to gather momentum, and gradually that ripple will become a small wave, and then a big wave, and finally it can become a tidal wave. You can control a tiny ripple of thought, but you cannot control a tidal wave of thoughts in your samsara. Because if that happens, then you spend your entire lifetime doing course correction. And a single false thought such as, I deserve to drink alcohol every night because I work so hard, or because life is so hard, or because my best friend died, or some such false justification, then that alcohol, I can drink alcohol tidal wave will cause a lifetime of suffering for you. So therefore, what can you do? What is your job? Your job is to watch your thoughts and then give them permission, whether they can stay in your mind or not. Be the boss. Actively watch your mind and its content, and do not come under their spell. They are not that powerful. Once you decide what kind of thoughts you want, they won't even try to come in, and after a while they fade away, and then they know that your mind is really strong, and then you start leading the life you want to lead. And in conclusion, I want to tell you that, if there is a tiny flame in a jungle, sometimes, due to heat, there can be a tiny little flame can come up. But if the wind is blowing, then, that flame can be easily put out. But sometimes, but suppose that flame grows because it finds some dry tinder wood, so it grows, finds an environment, which feeds that flame. Then what will happen is that the same wind which had once put out that tiny flame actually becomes an accomplice to the flame, to the growing flame. And now the fire that was growing on just on one bush becomes a forest fire and eats away, devours thousands of acres of forest fire. So what happened here? When you can't fight them, join them. So what happened was that the same wind, which had once been the enemy of the flame, becomes the friend of the stronger fire. In the same way, your intellect, in the beginning, it guides you, it warns you, it doesn't want you to think a certain way. But when you allow those negative thoughts go on, then what happens is after a while, your intellect starts supporting your negative thinking. It starts supporting your false thinking. It starts supporting that you're a victim. It starts supporting that this whole lifetime is a waste. It starts supporting that, you have been a victim of all your relationships. It starts supporting all your conclusions, because of which you give up your spiritual journey. And even if you had one day, you could have used that day to achieve moksha. But you use every day to just spin around in circles, being lost in samsara. So this intellect also, it's not foolproof, because just like the wind helped the flame, our intellect also gets corrupted. And that is why we go to satsang again and again, one, to clean up the intellect. That is why you might have noticed that if you continue on a regular basis, your satsang feels stronger, and negative thoughts, false thoughts, delusory thoughts can't, get you that much. But if you are, for any reason, you are working, you are traveling, you are pregnant, whatever happened, you are not able to keep up, you will find that your intellect is also slowly not supporting you. That is why in the beginning, until the intellect has become super fortified with jnanam, we don't, leave it alone. We keep it in company of saints and sages. We even say that, okay, you heard your teacher, now, you review one teaching also before you go to bed. It's like constant fodder to the intellect. And in the meantime, if you could do Dhamma and Shama, and even like I said, it's so powerful to know that, hey, yeah, I couldn't control my first thought, but I have power over everything else that follows from there onwards, the second thought onwards, the words, the actions, the habits, the character, my destiny. Then look at how much power you have. But we keep giving way to that first thought, then the second first thought, then the third first thought, and we remain in a powerless place, and then we become victims of our own mind. And even our teacher cannot pick us up from the mess that we have in our own mind. It's such a, like the leaky gut syndrome. We have a leaky mind syndrome, and then there's constant pollution of delusory, thinking with pure thinking from the Shastra, and we are unable to clean our way. But the reality is that we are very, very powerful, and Shamadama is not a hard work, but actually it's use of your power. Well, the way I like to teach Shamadama is that you already have the power, use it. And don't let clutter and trash, walk into your mind. And, while you are still a student and you don't know what's trash and what's healthy, like when we are a beginning Ayurveda student, we don't know which dal to eat. We don't know which rice to eat. We don't know which is the fat. But at least your attempt to try to think if it's healthy or not, at least try to find some signal of, where it's leading you. If you start questioning thoughts, the thoughts start losing their power on you and the paradigm starts shifting. So this is what I wanted to share with you. So that this is what he meant by discipline. It's not an externally imposed discipline. It is a discipline that we take on our own to protect Dhamma and Shama. And one of the things that I had to fight with was my tendency towards sadness. And probably that came, I didn't realize it in the beginning, but after I'd seen several deaths as a child, so probably that was there. And then early on, that awakening started happening, which leads to some disillusionment. And then probably after my sister passed away, who was my best friend when she was 30, thereafter I noticed that I had this tendency to become sad. And it was not like I wouldn't be crying, I wouldn't be, but I was not joyful. I was quiet, I was balanced, but I was on the low side. And then I questioned that also, and I realized that they were just these sadness thoughts that had crept in. There's nothing sad. When you start having understanding of the non-dual reality, then what is death and what is birth? So I had to question even those thoughts. So I've had to come. So now I can say that I'm sad when I need to, but I'm not sad all the time. So I'm just giving an example. And I hope this helps you. And I'm going to stop here because I've given you some very valid teaching. And I feel like you might have questions. And I thought that this class can help you understand Shamadama so that you don't have to feel like you're missing the bus. And where is the sukha? As you do Shamadama, your samsara becomes quieter and you keep listening to knowledge if it's available, and then or contemplating on that knowledge. And that knowledge, they say that they say in the Upanishad that knowledge is not something you have to find. Knowledge is something that is self-revealing, or bliss is self-revealing. Why is it self-revealing? Because it is the nature of your self. In fact, they say this bliss cannot be known through more study. It cannot be known through your intellect. It cannot be known through more hearing. The self can be known to you by connecting to it through a calm mind, like praying to it, and then it reveals itself to you. It is self-luminous, swata prakasha. It is imagine if there was a light of 1,000,000,000 suns right inside you. That's how the self is. That's how beautiful, luminous, and joyful it is. But only this bliss is covered by your samsara, these negative thoughts. And you're just still allowing them to come in. And you think that, oh, my senses, I can just use them. And we are living in a mass hypnotized world. It's a world of social media. It's a world of, all kinds of everybody. I recently heard, today I had lunch with a spiritual teacher, and she told me that in her town, she was from out of town. She's a Bhagavad Gita teacher for so many years, and she told me that in her town, in the gym, they have started teaching Bhagavad Gita. And the gym and the person teaching in the gym, there's nothing wrong with it, has probably learned Bhagavad Gita from somebody's podcast. So anybody is a teacher now. Anything is happening. It's a feast out there. And we're just filling our mind and our sense. Everything is open. And those old patterns are running. But all you have to do is some shama dhamma and then contemplate on the knowledge. How do you contemplate on knowledge? Aham atma, I am self. Yeah. My ananda, my bliss lives in me. My wholeness lives here. My happiness is here. There's sorrow outside, but this is an appearance. Right now, I'm just waiting to connect here, then everything will change. This is how you contemplate on the knowledge. And as you're doing that, you're actually praying to it, oh, my Atma, save me from this here. And then it self-reveals itself. And what is the teacher's job? The teacher is just reminding you, she or he, that teacher is keeping your buddhi clean, because it's through the buddhi that your Atma will give you darshan. The inner God will give you darshan. So this is how it happens. And once that happens, everything changes. That's all I can say to you. So now that those 1,000 sunlight, it's really sad, but it gets cluttered up, concealed by this senses and mind clutter. So that's all I can say to you. So may the self reveal its true nature is my blessing for you. And I'm now available for any questions till the 8:30.
Go ahead, Arjuna.
So I have a question. As you were speaking today, I've been very taken up with the Shloka 47 and about the fruits of action. And I'm just wondering how, it just seems to me that desire has to do with fruits of action, being preoccupied with the fruits of action. I want something. You're not in the present. You're reaching out in that way. So my question really is that an accurate perception?
Can you rephrase your question? I'm almost there. I just want just a little more clarity.
We're talking about in this shloka 67, and the wind, basically taking over, where if you are rowing your boat, you're in the present. If the wind takes you over, then it's going towards something that the senses are, in that sense, out of control. And so I'm just connecting that. I'm wondering if my connection of that to seeking the fruits of action rather than just the action itself of rowing is an accurate perception.
Yeah, why not? Because when there is lack of shama dhamma, how can karma yoga be established? How can you remain even in a only action is karma, but karma yoga is devotional action, where there is trust in Ishvara. And all
Right.
those things can happen, though that kind of belief system, that kind of, discernment can occur only when there is shamadama. Otherwise, the winds will carry away your mind to the future, to the past, to the right, to the left. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just also I had this I've had this on my wall. So I was just you were talking about the senses, the horses, or the senses, and Arjuna has his hands on the rein. So Krishna what's Krishna doing? He's Buddhi. That is the Atman, or that what?
Krishna is Atman.
Atman. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, this is really great. I like looking at this.
It's the ideal. It's
Yeah.
the iconoclastic Bhagavad Gita image.
Yeah.
Jai Ma Shunya Ji. It's Janya. I don't have a question as much as something that has really come forward for me in what you were speaking about tonight and has really helped to solidify some things for me, which is when you were talking about our prakriti and that first thought that arises, and that's not our free will. And it's our free will, all these subsequent thoughts. And I think what I have spent a tremendous amount of time on is the shame of that first thought, or the energy in trying to suppress that first thought. But in reality, I'm actually keep thinking the same thought because I keep focusing on that thought instead of having a new thought. So I think that is really helpful and illuminating for me. So I just wanted to say thank you. And that I think is such an important piece for me to really understand Shama and Dhamma.
This is a subtle point that people don't not people, I mean, it just needs more underlining, because the first thought may come from our animal nature, so it may be selfish, it could be brutish, it could be violent, it could be lusty, it could be jealous. But then the second thought is like, my jealous thought, So yeah, we don't need to be ashamed for that. We can be proud of how we respond afterwards.
Sakshi has a question.
I don't think Buddha, or I can't speak for Buddha, but I don't think Baba or I are Baba and I because of our first thoughts. We are who we are because of second thoughts onwards. Sometimes my first thought is like to be a big baby. But my second thought is like, I can handle this.
Sakshi, would you like to ask a question?
Jai Ma Shunya Ji. My question is, you've talked about TV and too many screens of the iPhone, but what about music? Is music, can we listen to too much music during the day? Like say when if I'm doing housework, or yeah, pretty much doing housework, and there's music on in the background. Is that something that should really be aware of?
We should be aware of all the inputs coming into all our sense organs, because there is something called, the soul thrives in silence also. So when the music is coming in, it is becoming sound waves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the sound waves are then keeping your mind busy versus you contemplating and connecting with something deeper. I don't know if you found this, but one thing that I had found was that when I first started driving in this country, because I never drove in India, and when I first started driving, I was like, oh, wow, there's a radio and you can listen to any music you want. And I kind of fell in love with the NPR and the KQED channel because I'm a slightly intellectual person and I like hearing these things. But then very quickly I found that the moment I jumped into the car, I wanted to turn on the radio on the pretext of listening to news or traffic update or something, or BBC or something really official and formal and intellectual. But it took me away into another world instead of focusing on my breath or my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why I have given there's a video in our YouTube on cultivating silence.
Mm-hmm.
So there's goodness in everything, but similarly, like I said, if you listen even to your teacher, just because you have access to it all day, then when are you going to do your own reflection? What she's saying, how does it sit with me? What does it elicit within me? What confusion does it bring up? Does it bring up some tears, some regret? No, we need some quiet time too for the senses to just stay. So I'm not saying not listen to music. And then again, there can be three kinds of music: tamasic, rajasic, sattvic. So you may want to listen to more sattvic music occasionally. If it's a jazz party or whatever, you can have some rajasic music also. I guess if it's Halloween, you can play tamasic music also. There's a room and time for everything. But the point is that you want to know why you're doing it, right?
Okay. Thank you.
Like I know this one person, and she has had a spiritual teacher for a very long time, this person. And that spiritual teacher has some chants. So this person told me that she plays those spiritual chants 24 hours in her house. So she's had to, back in the days when they were cassette players, she had to go through many cassette players. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correct, because, the cassette player would like die, croak out, and, with all the ohms, all the ohming going on. When I look at the person, I don't feel like that person has absorbed even 1% of the teacher's teachings because they were just so busy listening to the ohms. I feel like the senses have to be curated. But again, if we all the time sit in silence, then that's like we are underusing the senses. Then occasional music would be nice. Next question.
Acharya Shunya ji. The news, and I'm trying to sort of balance, staying up to date with what's happening in the world. And today was a particularly difficult day, I think, for those of you who know what was going on. And I feel like I have a responsibility. I want to stay informed. I'm politically active as a volunteer, and I think that's very important. And it's actually becoming more important to me. Really, I feel it's part of my karma yoga. But it can get very overwhelming very quickly. And I can be surrounded by people who are very rajasic and tamasic. And so I guess my question is really just describing my situation of wanting to stay informed, being responsible, doing my civic duty, and still, finding that balance and maintaining some quietness inside, which I feel it's very hard to find that quietness right now because of everything that's going on. So can you just speak to that?
Yeah, sure. I'll answer your question in two phases. Okay. I was a person who liked to be more informed. I mean, given my, I don't have advanced education in modern fields, but I'm not exactly an ignorant person. Probably more now. Earlier, I was a bit more up to date. So I would find a channel or a source which is more mature as people say, and calmer. It's not like this constant. And I would listen. I would find a time when I feel less anxious to go in and check it out, and then not go back to it again and again, because you are a political activist / spiritual seeker. So you want to not allow, so you want to give it some disciplines, and because that's one thing. And so it's a bit of an activist, not around American political system, but around Ayurveda. And I wanted Ayurveda to be a certain place or go a certain way or to be represented a certain way. But in my second phase of that is that I have progressed beyond that, and I've gone into Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Everything is a mithya. It is a reality, and it's not a complete reality. So since I have let go of all my Ayurvedic organizations, I've not let go in the sense of I bless them and I'm glad they are there, but I voluntarily stepped down from 2 organizations, and I would have stepped down sooner. They just won't let me go. But then I told them that I'm not going to be active. Does it mean I shunned my duty? No, I actually found some people to replace me. I realized that this wheel of rajas, tamas, politics, that will continue ad infinitum. I felt like when I was there, I added a sattvic energy, but beyond a point, just constantly balancing it would take away a lot from me. And I have entered the last stage of my consciousness. I'm like more in even grahastha is changing into sannyasa ashrama of sorts, where I'm very deep inside me. I'm still in the world because I'm a grahastha sadhu, so I'll always be part of the world, but it has allowed me to go really deep and find some other sustainable, amazing things. So I'm not able to impact the policy and the politics of Ayurveda. I again got an invitation from the PM's council for the 3rd time to advise them, and I said no. So I'm just giving 2 answers. But even when I was part of it, I had a time when I would respond to those emails. I had rules around it, and I gave them my best karma yoga approach, knowing that I can do my part, and what I offer is an offering to Ishvara. So I never felt like burdened with the work of Ayurveda, and nor did I feel like I owed them my 24/7 consciousness. And I built, other things also, wrote a book through it and everything. And then when I stepped out of it also, I got a lot of signs from Ishvara that I was done, and I could move on. So, I mean, we are part of an Advaita lineage. So Sumati, I will tell you that what we may feel is ultra important could be shifted a little bit, because nothing is more important than your own soul and your own consciousness. That's all I want to say. I don't want to say drop things, because then that leads to artificial sannyasa. But change your relationship with things so that they don't manage to agitate you. I am actually about to announce certain changes in my relationship with all of you and Vedika Global. And I'm doing them proactively before all of you begin to agitate me. So, so that it remains harmonious and smooth. And so it's not there yet. But whatever I notice in my galaxy of life experiences that is not harmonious to my own spiritual practice, because happiness lives within me, I then unapologetically but humbly, with God consciousness and Baba's help, Guru's help, move things around. So I am with you. I've also been somebody who, I'm from a political family. I'm from a spiritual political family. My grandfather, great grandfather were spiritual leaders. But my father has been part of the India's ruling party. In fact, he was the administrator of the All India Party for 10 years. And the current prime minister is his friend. All prime ministers have been his friend. The highest ranking ministers and prime ministers have come to our home. My father is part of many meetings. So I know this world. But I have seen my father, and I've seen a difference in Baba. Baba was always also a social activist. Baba believed in change. But between my father and my Baba, I found that my Baba was a much more peaceful person. My father is also very peaceful. I'm very proud of him, and he's not a Rajasic person. But encounter with Rajasic people, encounter with Tamasic people, it takes a while for him. But fortunately, my father has a 75-year or 80-year, because now he's 85, and he learned himself at 8. So you can imagine he's been meditating since then. My father has a daily yoga practice. He has a meditation practice. And he has, studied at Baba's feet. So he's an honest person. So he sleeps, peacefully. But people around him, they're constantly texting him, calling him, right? So I see my father's life, and there's just that one step that he could. So he decided he didn't want to run for an office, though he was offered that. He decided and he doesn't belong to any one party. He belongs for Satyam or truth. So I learned that you could be changing things. You don't have to do that. It's a long answer, but I wanted to give you many facets of things. So
Thank
that
you.
you
I
can be
appreciate
honest
it.
to what you want to do, but don't lose yourself to it. Right here, whatever you believe in, you want to curate your experiences. Like when I write a book, I'll give you an example. So when I'm working on a book, often in Brahma Muhurta, I have a lot of thoughts around the book. Okay. But then, at 2 a.m. also those thoughts are coming. Then at 3 a.m. also those thoughts are coming. Once or twice I even wrote them because they were noble thoughts. And then I said, look, wait a minute. I'm glad I'm being an instrument for the world, and I'm glad I'm writing this wonderful book, but my sleep is also important. So I literally told that thought, I said, if you're going to come before Brahma Muhurta, you can go away. I don't care who wants to write to me what. My sleep is important. So I even, said no to thoughts around my book. Now they're behaving themselves. It come around 5:36. So this will help you.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. And I remember I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, you talked about how you can be standing in chaos but still find the quietness inside. And I love that teaching and been trying to practice that. And it's very challenging these days, but I'm trying to. So thank you.
It also depends for all of us, not just Sumati's question, but we all have, corporate world, other friends, other things which are more rajas and tamas or our work or our commute. So we have to develop then a real dedicated practice of feeding our senses and our minds, some silence, some sattva, saying no to some things that, saying no to some mixers or birthday parties or whatever it takes to be like that. Any other question? One last question. You have the power. You can lead your full life. I'm very proud to tell you that the Prime Minister of India today has a daily meditation practice and a yoga practice. And Indira Gandhi, you might have heard of her, she used to wake up every day at 4:30 and she had an hour and a half yoga asana and pranayama practice. So you can, do what you want. You can lead a nation, but you can still be selective around how you use your senses, how much you speak, how much you, tweet, how much you share on Facebook, etc. I'm not against it. I'm not going to sit there and police you for that. An example was that, there's every leader of a nation gets a lot of, there's always another camp that's trying to, criticize you, the opposition. And I saw that PM Modi, instead of responding to every opposition, he started a podcast called Dil Ki Baat, from my heart. My words from my heart. That's what it meant in our language. And, it's a nationwide podcast, and he responds to the whole week's worth of criticisms or questions that have come to his table. And he'd rather have a conversation with the whole nation rather than answering people and tweeting like some people do in this nation, and it's so settling, and his voice is so calm. And he eats sattvic food, and he's he's a vegetarian. That's by birth, but he he follows a spiritually elevated lifestyle. So his power comes from that. So I'm not necessarily fond of him, or I'll go vote for him or something like that. But when I notice in a politician saintly qualities, I don't understand why you can't be in the corporate world and embody that. I don't understand why you can't be in a rock band and embody that. You could. And your Shakti will be so much more, because your art, your creativity, your money-making skills, they are all coming from the deep vastness of your consciousness, and not just your your tired senses figuring out something. I think, whether it was I think all world leaders, whoever have made a paradigm shift, have somewhere embodied this Shama Dhamma qualities. They don't get caught up by everything. They select what they want to deal with, how they want to respond, how much they sleep well, they exercise well, they eat well, and that is the key to success. So many blessings to all of you for that. and remember that it's your power, it's your privilege to do that. You have beautiful equipment called the mind and the senses. Use it to achieve your material and spiritual goals. Don't squander their energy. Don't exhaust yourself. Don't waste them. Do some good work. Do seva. Write something. Contemplate. Enjoy nature. And you shall find that a whole wealth of beauty, joy, and intelligence reveals itself from within you. That is what will happen when you begin when you begin doing Shamadana. All right, so time-wise, we are done. So, Jama everyone, and I shall see you soon at the retreat. Asato ma satkamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om peace, peace, peace.